Hello, everyone. I'm with Alex. Is it Monahan?
Yeah,
Correct. All right,
good.
Alex
Pretty,
Monahan
pretty good.
with Oddsjam. I signed up with Oddsjam a little while back. I've been betting for quite some time with Gematria Sport Guys on Patreon, and we're kind of sharing some ideas, going back and forth. And let's get a video and introduce Alex and what he's done with this amazing program he has. It's a profitable betting tool that, for lack of better words, we use the word degenerate once in a while, or I don't like that word so much, but people just betting in general. If you're a sports bettor, handicap, or whatever, you've got to shop these lines and figure out what's the best pick. And Alex, I mean, I guess my first question is, how did you get started doing this? You came out of school, and I don't know if you worked before that or what you did, but you love betting and you love playing the odds. And how'd you create this whole thing? There's got to be some story behind what everyone does in life. So tell us what you did. How'd you get started?
Yeah, so I graduated and I'd always been into gambling. And by that, I mean poker and the idea of Vegas. Like, I just loved it. I dabbled offshore sports betting. I wasn't like super big into it, but I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I bet. And I enjoyed it. And I would say I was working at a trading firm, kind of on like the Pennsylvania, New Jersey border. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say, gambling all frickin' day at work, and then sports betting legalized. And, I saw this beautiful ad, FanDuel, like $1,000 risk-free bet or whatever it was. And like, kind of got hooked on sports betting and was like, dang, well, I guess I'm signing up for this sports book. And then DraftKings is like, this deposit bonus. And I like think about it and I'm like, is this too good to be true, or sports betting freaking legalizing? So it hit New Jersey, it hit Pennsylvania. I was in the first two states. And then I was just like, yeah, this is fun. And I started
Yeah.
betting. And then I would say like the addiction grew in a good way, in a good way. But, I just loved it and would say bet on sports pretty seriously. Quit my job, started Oddsjam. Here we are.
So you're at a trading desk. So you were probably doing like option trading or something like that. I mean, they pay pretty well.
Yeah.
Why did you leave so quick? I mean, did you find that the money was there right away? I mean, did you like connect right away? Because like you built this software program, and like how did you get into the software part of it too?
Yeah. I would say like the opportunity just kind of like I didn't want it to pass me by, right? I didn't want to regret it.
Mm.
And I kind of realized like how much I love sports betting, in my free time. And I guess just like my co-founder for Oddsjam, we just started like, chatting. He was working at a previous place. He kind of like, was ready to hop in. We met some cool people and honestly just dove in, and at first weren't really sure where it would take us, but I'm you know pretty happy with it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm an SEO guy by back in the day, so I know you have a lot of traffic coming to your website. 400 plus thousand a month, by the way. You should be proud of that because that's very difficult to do for starting from scratch. So, when was the company founded? I don't know how long it's been out there.
Yeah, so we incorporated in like late April, so not long ago.
Okay.
And I would say like, you know, growth and stuff like that has just kind of been good. And it's
Hmm.
like we try to be pretty transparent, right? Our product's different. We try to like work with a bunch of people because a bunch of people have different ideas about sports betting, right?
They
People,
do. Yeah.
right? Like there are straight up handicappers who just think they know who's going to win an NBA game. And honestly, maybe some of them are good, maybe they aren't. I don't know, right? I don't care. I don't
Mm.
know. But like Oddsjam's a very simple premise, which is just like look for value, line shop, because there's like 100 freaking sports books in the US and all these sports books have different numbers. And even if you're not like, nobody wins every time. I've had days I've lost 20 grand. I've had days I've, gone up well over that. It's just like you're gonna win, you're gonna lose. In terms of profit, what it boils down to is the odds you're getting, right? If you go 50 and 50 and you're getting plus money, like plus 110, you were super profitable, right? And if you go
Hmm.
50 and 50 and you're betting at minus 110, you suck, right? You lost a lot of money. And it
Yeah.
sucks if
True.
you lost money. So everything is about the odds, right, that you're getting. So essentially what Oddsjam does is just try to like give people a way to find value in different ways, or at least if they are a handicapper, we have a lot of handicappers on the product, like find some picks that maybe are a bit more mathematical, or at least like at better odds, better prices, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can you explain the mathematical odds to people? Like I started to get my wheel spinning when I started. I'm like, okay, there's discrepancies in the lines. I'm like, how do you find like like when you started, how did you find discrepancies to where you knew that this was better than, obviously you're a math guy, right? Like your background, Stanford mathematics, customer or computer science. I mean, how did you find the discrepancies, and how do you put that together to where your program is synced and said this one's better than that one, or is that your secret sauce you don't want to talk about? That's fine, but
No,
I think
I mean,
a lot of people
really,
will probably sign up if they knew exactly what your program does.
yeah.
Like when I first
Initially,
started, I'm like, I don't know. Good.
initially, I was just looking manually. I mean, I was like,
Oh yeah, okay.
yeah, I would be on a bunch of different, what I consider mediocre tools. And I would be like, oh, whoa, the Lakers line, AD's out. And I'd be like, what are the odds at? And I'd have freaking 40 sports books open,
Oh,
even if I didn't have them in my state, just to like see what the odds were. And I would just like literally go from tab to tab and be like, oh, what's good, what's good. And so all Oddsjam does, right, is every sports book has its own like array of whatever, like 20,000 odds, 50,000, depending on the book, a lot of data, right? These odds
yeah,
are constantly moving, right? Durant
yeah.
gets injured tonight, whatever, right? Nets odds are flying around. And it's not just the money line, right? Let's say Kyrie gets injured, whatever,
Hmm.
right? Like everything has to move in that game. The money line, the total, the spread, all the player props. Harden's going to have the ball more. His total points has to go up. Is like this market, everyone thinks of like bets as just like static. Like, are the Lakers going to win? It's like there are so many factors that go into that. There's sharp action coming in at all different points, people, syndicates hammering lines offshore, which causes these like line movements. So these lines are constantly bouncing around. There's players getting injured in the NFL and baseball, right? There's weather. There's all these different factors that are constantly changing. So these odds are always moving. And honestly, I got sick of it because I was spending my whole day just manually looking for good bets, right? I literally would get home from work and just sit on my computer for like 8 hours, drink a beer, and just like try to find good bets. And I enjoyed it. But then at some point, it was just like, damn, like software would be cool, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
all right. And then, so that kind of like led to the creation of Oddsjam. And people ask us all the time, like, your product can't work because if it did work, you wouldn't share it. And it's like, that's a very like flawed mindset because as we spoke about before we started recording,
Mm.
is sportsbooks don't have to take your business, right? It's why being a
Nah.
professional sports bettor, even if you have an edge in every bet, I would
Mm.
never bet on sports full time. And the reason for that is like you just get cut off, right? And it may be a while, it may be a year, it may be 2 years, but you're not just going to make $1 million off BetMGM and they're just going to sit there and take your $5,000 bet. It's not going to happen. They're going to limit you to $10 eventually, and then BetMGM is out. And then of course there's other sports books, but like the point is it's very, very difficult, right? To like, it's a great side hustle in my opinion. It's
Mm.
not something I'd want to at least do full time unless I'm like creating a product for other people to find value with. But all Oddsjam does, right, is it scans the sports betting market, all the odds, not every market, but like a lot of the odds, player props, whatever. It tracks the odds on every book. And then there are some betting tools built on top of that to point out value. Like, Pinnacle, the sharpest sports book in the world, has dropped the Lakers to plus 140 tonight. You can still get plus 170 on frickin' 10 bet, right? Or Leo Vegas or whatever, right? Like Bet Online, whatever. So you can be like, oh, consider that bet, which may or may not have a profit margin, right? Or you may has a profit margin if it's on the positive EV page, but you
Mm.
may or may not decide to bet with that information.
Right, right.
And the whole premise is like, you can't find good bets manually. It's very difficult
Mm-hmm.
because let's say AD gets, he's sitting out tonight. Lakers lines are going to be on the move.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not just going to like manually stumble upon gold, or it's very hard to, right?
Yeah.
Because other people are using software.
Mm-hmm.
Lakers line is going to come down
Mm-hmm.
eventually. and it's very hard to just like find things manually. So that was the whole point of Oddsjam, is we want to show you the data in real time so you can identify good bets.
So value. Yeah, I didn't quite. I kept hearing the value before. I'm like, oh, what's the value mean? Like to me, value in the beginning meant it's a better pick or a better bet. But then I started looking when I started studying your information. I thought, oh, the value is it going to benefit me if I win positive or negatively, right? If I, like I said, if it's a negative bet, like you said, do 10 negative like money lines that are negative, you might fall apart. But hit like 3-4 dogs, you might do great, right?
Right, exactly.
There's a big difference there, and most people don't know that.
Right? Like if you go 50 and 50 at plus 150 odds, you are the richest freaking guy ever, right? You go 50 and 50 at minus 150, you're broke. So,
right.
Exactly. All that matters is beating the closing line consistently. So the premise for people who don't get this, right, is if let's say the Suns and Hawks are playing tonight, every sports book has them minus 110, minus 110. So you're betting $110 to win 100. But one of these two teams has to win.
Correct.
Right? So, and according to the sports books, because they're giving you the same odds on both teams, each team is equally likely to win, which means each team is 100% divided by 2, right? 50% to win. So both teams are 50% to win, but you have to bet 110 to win back your 100.
Correct.
So the general premise is the fair price would be the midpoint, right? If the sports books didn't have VIG, if they didn't have juice, the fair price would be the midpoint, which is plus 100 for both teams. That is a zero juice, zero hold market. Plus 100 Suns, plus 100 Hawks. You're betting 100 to win 100 if a team has a 50% win rate. So what Oddsjam does is, let's say, every sports book has the Suns and Hawks minus 110, except, Betfred, sportsbook in Colorado, has the Suns plus 120. Every other sportsbook has it minus 110, minus 110. Maybe there was some line movement, Booker's out, whatever. I don't care, right? It's all about the numbers. Is every sportsbook in the sports betting ecosystem has minus 110, minus 110. So you have a good sense that the fair price or the fair line should be that midpoint, plus 100. But Betfred is giving you plus 120. So that is a positive EV bet because you are getting odds of plus
better value.
That is above the fair or the true price for that bet.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Now you keep mentioning the sharpest book in the world is Pinnacle, and you blatantly just go over that and over it and over it. But can you explain what exactly, like, why you say that so many times? Like this, to be a sharp bettor, there's something to this Pinnacle line. Are you saying that the Pinnacle has the most fair lines or the best lines to follow? Like, which one would it be?
Yeah, I mean,
or both.
Right. The sports betting ecosystem is very dynamic, right? And Oddsjam is a product that has to incorporate a lot of complexity into a product, right?
Okay, yeah.
So there's like this spectrum of sportsbook sharpness, right? There's like a whole spectrum. Circa in Las Vegas is known to be pretty damn sharp too, right? Bookmaker, very sharp. Bet Online, very sharp. Pinnacle is kind of the gold standard. They were the first sports book, I believe, in the world to start reduced juice lines. Every sports book had point spreads minus 110, minus 110. Pinnacle moved it down, I believe, to like minus 107, minus 107, then minus 105, minus 105, which is what you'll typically see now. But essentially, Pinnacle has a very different philosophy, right? They don't ban you for arbitrage betting or for winning. They use your bets to inform their lines, right? They take sharp action, long story short, and they're one of the biggest sports books right out there. So they take a lot of action and they take a lot of sharp action, right? So their market is very efficient, long story short. So like when Booker gets injured, a ton of sharp action is coming in on whoever's playing the Suns. On the offshore books, first, because they allow sharp action, and typically they don't like ban, limit, whatever, right? Like, so their markets are very good indications, Pinnacle especially, of what the true price for a team should be, right? Sports betting has variance, right? It's like flipping a coin, right?
Mhm.
It's like 50% heads, 50% tails. Nobody knows the future. Nobody knows who's going to win NBA games tonight, but every team has some true win probability for that game given all information available at right now.
At that time, right? Okay.
At that time, which can always change, right? A team could have a 50% win rate, then Booker's injured. Now the Suns have a 30% win rate, right?
Mhm.
Like this is dynamic, right? But essentially, that's the reason we say it. I know
So,
that was a long answer, but
yeah. Well, how would you define the sharp bet? Because I talked to a guy who's been betting for like 20 years, and I try to explain the stuff to him. He's like, some of the guys been around for a while. Like, yeah, you take the spread line. It's all the touts and the bookies are all minus 110 spread -2, +3, -110, -1. It's like everything's minus 110. Well, those guys don't win a lot. And I've challenged a few of them, and I beat them over 2-3 weeks. And I'm like, okay, at least I know what I'm doing. But how do you define the word like sharp betting if it's just by definition?
yeah, I think it's better.
Dummy it down.
I would say a sharp sports bettor is like a mathematically profitable sports bettor. There's someone who understands value in lines. Like, what would I call a sharp bet? Let's say every sports book has freaking, this is an example of a bet I placed today.
Okay.
Every sports book had LaSalle. This game's going on right now. +3. I hit them +5. So I got 2 extra points in the spread.
Okay.
Compared to the rest of the sports betting ecosystem, and 2 points in the spread, is a pretty big deal, right?
Yeah.
People don't realize the distribution of outcomes, if a team is a +3, right, points underdog, the projected outcome is they lose by 3, right? That is the most likely outcome, right? But there's a distribution where they probably won't lose by 30. That has a much lower probability. But long story short, the difference between getting 3 and 5 in a college basketball point spread is pretty massive, right?
Can be, yeah. Sure.
+5 is probably -110. +3 is probably +130, right? So that's a sharp bet, I would say, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes more sense. Yeah.
Value.
Yeah, it's all about the value. Yeah, that's what and then as far as you mentioned a lot of times about emotions, and I'm a day trader too, not the extent you are. I'm still learning, but day trading is difficult. And I have a little poster up here. It says, good trading is built around if-then statements. Bad trading is built around I think statements. What you think simply doesn't matter. The market doesn't care. And I'm seeing a lot of similarities between the market and sports betting. I've seen I'm looking at more analytical things, and I talk with Joe with the what's it called, the Wolf line. I'm starting to learn some of that stuff too, because there's different variances on all this stuff, and if you don't know it, it's like you're almost going in blind. That I think they call that a gambler, right? You're taking a chance. Where
Right.
I never gamble because I'm not taking a chance with my money until I know for sure.
Right.
What's the lock? Well, I mean, So as far as emotions, I will hear you say stuff like, I don't care who's playing. I don't care what this is. I don't care who's this. Like, just because someone gets hurt doesn't mean that you can't bet on that team. I've seen a lot of times someone gets hurt, the odds change, you bet, you win. So, and how do they know it's going to be within 3 points? How do they know it's 3.5 points? How do they determine that stuff? How do you take the emotional part out? Because I don't play with emotions. You don't do it, but I got a guy to contact me now that I'm an affiliate of yours and promoting your program. He's like, dude, I lost 60,000 euros last year. I'm like, not good. Sign up. He's like, well, what's the point? I'm like,
I would say right. I don't want to play scratch off lottery tickets, right? I don't, right.
I don't play them at all. No.
The people who make money sports betting aren't the guys who sit in a room and watch highlights, right? It's the people, those aren't right. They're not. They're really just not. It's the people who are really mathematical about their bets and identify value, right? Like golf is a very good example that gets a lot of sharp action. We don't even have it on Oddsjam yet, but it's coming when we redesign the site. But I would say I know I make money at this point. I've tracked, right? I've tracked enough bets. I've made enough money that I'm confident and like, I just trust the math. I'm very mathematical. Like, I understand the true lines, the true odds. Like, I'm such a big believer in it. I understand the difference between what is the probability, right? What's the difference between like a +2 and a +5? Like, all that I know. So I just like know, right?
Right. Right.
And I would say I just like don't care. I stopped caring if a bet loses. I don't care.
Sure. But
I don't
you have to
want the
understand too,
games.
like you're a very analytical person, right? By nature. Like your brain, that's how your brain's geared, that's how it works. So for you it's natural. For most people that are gambling, they're, Joe down the street who works at Walmart, or they're Bob who's, he's an executive at some big company, or me that, I have a job too, but I'm working on more of this stuff.
Yeah.
How do you help those people like understand that like they can't get out of their mind like, well, I have to track the score, I have to look at the head to head stuff, and well, this guy's out today. Like one of my buddies, he's a horrible gambler. He loses, he can't get past 25% win rate, but he still thinks like things like, well, if the team won 3 in a row, I know they're not going to win 4, I'm going to bet against them. You don't
Yes,
how
that's very
the,
flawed thinking, right?
it is, yeah.
It's like being like, yo,
Like
this
how do you help them understand that? Because we most people don't think like you do. You're a different
right.
breed of person.
I mean, it's like flipping a coin, right? 3 times. Let's say
Yeah.
it shows up on tails 3 times, then being like, it has to show up on heads the next time. It's like, no, it doesn't. It's
No, it
50,
doesn't.
right? Like,
No.
I would say like, we're going to make a lot more features of Oddsjam free or less expensive and kind of start to, but like the point is like people need to track their bets, right? Because
Yeah.
even the dumbest sports bettors or the least informed, right? The people who just maybe it's very hard to realize if you're making or losing money, right? Like
Yeah, it is.
I have 30 grand bet today already across
You do?
across 6 different sports books. It's very hard unless you're tracking your bets and you're actually betting on sports. If you're making one play a night, doesn't freaking matter, right? Doesn't matter. But you'll know if you won or lost. But if you're making like 4 to 5 bets, you're throwing in some parlays, whatever, is you're still going to have winning days, even if you're a terrible sports bettor, right? It's like you may win $600 one day, then the next day you lose 900, then you lose 200, then you make 300, and you're like, damn, I feel like I'm doing pretty well. And it's like, no, you actually lost money, right? And it's very hard to realize as a sports bettor, because the difference between a sharp sports bettor who maybe even makes a full-time living sports betting or someone who loses 30 grand this year sports betting is a difference in win rate of like, probably like 6%, right?
Wow.
It's winning 47% of the time or 53% of the time. Is the coin, right, flipping in your favor? Is it weighted to you or is it weighted to the Bucks, right? I mean, it's very similar. A good analogy I like is it's very similar to like roulette. Why does the casino not care if I go in? Why does Wynn Resorts not care if I go into to a roulette wheel? I bet 50 grand on red and it shows up red and they have to pay me out 50 grand because they know it's literally impossible for them to lose money long term. I mean, how do you think they build the beautiful Wynn and this company makes so much money, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. Because WinBet just knows, or Wynn just knows, like this is the exact probability the roulette wheel shows up on red. And it is not, like, so I think that's what, is very hard for people to get a sense of. You're not a good roulette player if you go in and you bet $10,000 on red and it shows up red, because the numbers it's literally impossible to win roulette long term, just like it's impossible to win scratch off lottery tickets, etc. But you can win in games where, sports betting and poker, basically. Maybe blackjack you can throw in there too, depending on what you're doing. But like there are skill-based games, right? Trading is a skill-based game. Sports betting is a skill-based game. It's not just a scratch-off lottery ticket, right?
No.
So sports betting is one of the very unique forms of gambling, right? You're not going to make money off DraftKings Casino, but you can make money off DraftKings Sportsbook because you have the power to determine what you're betting at what time, at what odds, right?
Yep. So what's the most you've ever won, if you're willing to divulge, what's the most you've ever won in a day, and what's the most you've ever lost in a day? And
Probably
did you feel different either way? Because I'm assuming you're probably going, yeah, I don't care, I'll make it back. Where most people probably like, oh my god, I lost 20 grand. You know what I mean?
yeah, probably like 20 and 30 or something like that
Wow.
have been won and lost in a day. Maybe even more.
Amazing.
I actually there were some good days. The up days have definitely been bigger, but
So what's your biggest day? Are you willing to divulge that or no?
no, I think it's like 30, yeah.
30? Okay, 30.
And I
Yeah.
think 20 was the worst day. But the thing is like the more bets you have placed, right, the less likely you are to, like, the more bets you have placed, right? When people hear like, oh, you have $40,000 bet today, I think I'm dropping 40 grand on the Lakers. It's like, no, I'm dropping $500 on 80 different things that I believe all of them are good. And I know not all of them are going to win, or it's very
Sure.
statistically improbable, but I also
Right.
know I'm very unlikely to like lose every bet. Right. So
Yeah.
usually like I end up somewhere where like I'd say like winning days happen like 63% of the time or something, just based on the quantity of bets I have placed, all with a mathematical edge. But like, for example, yesterday, my biggest bets were on the Hawks. The Hawks lost, so yesterday was an L.
Right. Right.
Because I
So
had like 4 grand bet on the Hawks by the time the game started. I just
okay.
kept betting them down.
Right.
From plus
Right.
170, I bet them all the way to plus 140. I think I had them bet plus 170, plus 155, plus 150, plus 145, and plus 140.
Okay. Are you willing to talk about some of the upgrades you have coming up in the near future?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So we're redesigning the site for speed. Speed is the name of the game. What people don't realize, like, I mean, you probably know it just from being a trader, right? Things can change quick.
Oh yeah.
Quick.
Oh yeah. I got stopped out the
Quick.
other day real fast. Like that. Like, oh, but it happens.
So exactly. So we're redesigning the site for speed as well as just content. We want to produce, I think at Oddsjam we realized what we're good at is trying to be transparent about the product and producing content that shows people, sports betting, right? Like I love sports betting. I think it's a lot of fun, and I don't think there's much good content. I don't want to see or hear anything from Dave Portnoy, right? Like they're in granted, it's mass media, but we believe, and we're pretty confident at this point, there are enough people out there who want more informed content about sports betting. And that's what we hope to do. And I'm not saying everything's going to be like super mathematical, as you mentioned, right? Not everyone cares about math, and that's just human nature.
No.
Like, you couldn't get me out of bed ever. I would literally sleep for the rest of my life if I had to read books, right? I don't like books, right? Like, people like different things. So we're really going to be working on just trying to get out helpful sports betting information, fun sports betting information, to more people. So a lot more content.
Okay. Now, as a user or as a bettor, is there any more tools that be coming out available? Like, we have any kind of like things that'll
100%.
help analytics or
There's
artificial
going to be
intelligence things, or
a lot more markets. We're adding all the UK books. We're adding all the European books, which obviously doesn't benefit you, but all the Australian books, those are all coming in. A lot more markets. We're also going to start doing stuff with multi-way markets, right?
multi-lay
So like
markets?
take a first touchdown score, right? There's like 40 different outcomes or things you can bet on for that first touchdown score. And it's like, how do you know if a bet has value, right? Let's say every sports book has Cooper Kupp plus 500 to score the first touchdown in the Super Bowl. You can get, you can get plus 625 on DraftKings though. How do you know? Do you like that bet? That's what we're going to be doing too. Thinking about value in multi-way markets, like first basket score in NBA, first touchdown, futures markets. Who's going to win the Super Bowl in 2022? What if you can get the Chiefs plus 800? Is that good? Is that crappy? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a challenge, I think, too. Like, how will you set that up though? Because most people think, well, I don't know who's going to win the Super Bowl. I don't know who's going to win this and that and the other game. Like, how would you set that up in a future time frame where you can have a tool that says you should bet on these teams, at beginning of the season, I guess, or at half the season? Like, let's say, like, I'm a Penguins fan. Are they going to win this year? I have a good feeling they will, but it's just my feeling.
Right.
and it's a biased opinion because I'm a
Yeah,
Penguins fan, you know. So
so
it's like,
essentially, the same way where if a team is -110, -110, you can back out a fair midpoint price of +100. You can do that with futures. It's just a lot more computationally expensive because you need to consider every outcome, remove the VIG, and find a fair win rate for each team based on the markets, if that makes sense.
I think it makes sense. Yeah.
Right. So, like, because the same way that sportsbooks make money on two-way markets, like who's going to win tonight, Lakers or Nets, they just juice their markets for Super Bowl winner 2022, right?
Right. Right.
It's like, is there value in Washington Commanders now plus 5,000? It's like, I don't know, but there's.
Let's check their record.
I could go back it out. I could figure it out. It's just
really,
yeah.
All with math.
What?
How'd you come up with the formulas? Like, how'd you create the formula to figure these things out? I mean, because it's
these aren't formulas we made up, right? They are like zero VIG, zero juice lines. There's like there's an industry formula for removing juice from markets. The thing is no one has built that into a product or also tried to convey that to people, right? Every company in the sports betting industry is either selling picks or they're just producing content, right? Correct. They're like mini ESPNs, right? Action Network. It's just a lot of articles, right? So Oddsjam's really the first product to say, like, we think we can build actually valuable sports betting tools that people will pay for. And we're just taking like arbitrage formula, like these are things we're just taking the formulas and building it into a product.
Interesting.
No VIG is a formula, right? Removing juice from multi-way markets, there's a formula for it. Like if you just Google it, right? There's a formula that you can go through.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, you can go through and then you find all the implied probabilities, you divide by the sum, then you convert it back into odds. Yeah. They're all formulas, right?
I've seen a few of your videos where you're drawing on the board and I'm looking going, okay.
Boring.
Well, no, I love math. I'm just not that good at it. Like I've tried to be good in math. I understand. I'm good with numbers. I'm just not really great with the math. But if I have a formula, someone shows me, I'll chart it out a few times and I'll do. Like example, in college, first year algebra 1, I failed by 1 point, and I was like, why'd I fail? He's like, well, you didn't get you failed on your final. I'm like, there's only 1 point. He goes, if you build a bridge, and the bridge has one beam, just one beam that's not stable, someone's got to be responsible for that beam. I'm like, okay. He goes, that's why you failed. So I'm taking your class next year, and I passed with an A. So I'm good at it, but I'm sloppy, right? So that's kind of cool. You have some new tools coming out, and you definitely you've hit the nail on the head with some of these formulas. Like I said, it's made me a much better. I say sports investor because I don't like the word gamble. I don't feel like I'm gambling. And there's a lot of times I'll look, like you said, how do you identify which one is good? Like I saw, was it Kai or whatever the guy? I don't know some of these guys in basketball. It was a 24 and over. I'm like, he averages 22. I'm like, I'll take the under. And I won. And I do that a lot because it's like if you follow the trend of what's on TV and the news and all these shows and these guys, they're never right. They're always like, oh, yeah. And I think people follow them because Vegas wants them to follow them, and that's how they get emotional about things. They get invested in what. Well, I was told this guy's going to be okay, great, but who cares?
Dave Portnoy doesn't want to create, content that helps people make money off Barstool. He doesn't want to create valuable content, right? Like, come on, right?
Why would he?
Exactly.
It's like the dentist telling you to brush your teeth all the time. I was always going, why? Don't you want me to have cavities?
Yeah, exactly.
But there's fluoride in the toothpaste, so there you go.
Anyways, I have to hop.
Yeah, sure.
But I really enjoyed this. We'll do it again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alex.
Get you on the Oddsjam YouTube, going live or something, talking about some stuff. So we'll do that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks a lot. I love your program. I'll be promoting it left and right. I've got about 4 or 5 videos up now. So I've got some other guys I'll be doing interviews as well. So we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Alex. Have a great day.